That's its spice of life. Don't be too moderate.
Moderation. Everything moderation, everything moderation. Love it. Alright, so yeah, I reckon, Johnny, over to you.
Yeah. So hello, and welcome to the show. Too afraid to ask, too lazy to Google. Well, this could be the show for you. No idea yet. And from working in a place with anyone over the age of 50, people just don't Google things. And it's like, oh yeah, Johnny, you're the one that Googles. I'm like, why am I known as that person? It takes you 2 seconds to Google something. I don't know why people don't. Sorry. So it seems from the previous 2 shows, we've been having a little theme. You know, we've had hobbies and then vices. So I thought I'd not fully go along with the theme, but along the lines, this episode the topic is mobile phones. So the first question I want to ask you two is, what are the uses of a mobile phone? And so this will just be some of the basics, and then could be some new tech you've heard of. Alistair, you're up first.
Cheers. Well, I've got this trusty flip phone at the moment, which is lovely, which is my work phone. So now it's just for the sheer nostalgia and fun. I definitely, I think obviously the lockdown has kind of framed this a little bit in my mind, because obviously you don't really need the phone in the same way you used to when you're actually leaving your house. But I think they are a massive part of our lives now, and I definitely wouldn't really want to go and live without one.
So what are some of the uses?
Didn't answer your question at all, did I?
That's why I'm here, the host.
Contacting people, I reckon, is probably a pretty big one, like via whatever means it is these days. And then I think just like
your day-to-day on the phone.
The day-to-day, I think it's just the ease that it makes so many things that would otherwise be slightly more annoying. Just that sheer, like, oh, I can Google that. Oh, I can just Google it on my phone. I can just quickly ask Siri, or, you know, I'm going to go somewhere. I don't even need to worry about the GPS or anything. It's right there.
What's some new tech? As in, like, do you know, you're saying flip phone? Now you can get like the full touch flip phones where like it's huge.
Foldable phone, yeah.
Yeah, foldable phone. So do you know some new tech maybe something that's come to mind? You're like, oh, that's cool. That's like when you don't think of a phone doing that, like heart rate monitors in the back of your phone, just usually as like a random feature which everybody has now, but nobody cares about anymore because it's just, yeah. So any new tech you've thought of, or not thought of, but know about?
He invented it.
Yeah, I can't. It's a great idea, mate. It's called, yeah. I mean, I could see. I just go based on like TV shows that have this now. It seems to be, I reckon, sort of the kind of far hardware will become far less important. It will just be kind of like Google Glasses, or, you know, like a futuristic glasses or something with your hand. So you just have your phone as part of your hand when you want to use it, or if you want to have like a tablet, you just have the desk in front of you, and then it will become a tablet with whatever you've got in your eyes or contact lenses. I don't know. I think the future of that is quite cool. But I don't know. Maybe that's just how TV's conditioned me to think about futuristic technology.
And to Freddie?
So
basic uses first, and then new tech you've heard of.
Okay, because I was going to say he's touching on the self-fulfilling prophecy of sci-fi, where people invent stuff because they see it on television or media. So uses, I mean, for contacting people is a pretty good way of doing it. Like, communication is actually probably a solid method of making phones for the last however many years, because you're right, even though it's evolved from calling to texting to voice messaging to FaceTime messaging, it has always been communication. Also, I guess access to information. Is that too general?
That's one of the biggest ones now, most of the time, because actually, how much do we actually communicate on a phone? Like, picking up, most people don't actually call anyone anymore. It's either video call or it's either texting or messaging somehow.
Yeah. So I'd say, if I may, that the 3 major parts of having a phone now are communication, access, and control. So now you can control your TV with it. You can control things around the house with it. You can control Netflix or your computer or your watch or your treadmill. I don't know. Again, I'm not really, as much as I love tech, I never really buy the latest stuff, because it just seems like I'll just wait till it comes out later. It does seem they're the 3 major parts.
Also, cameras.
Didn't think of that.
That's been one of the biggest things for phones.
What did I forget?
I know, right? It's like both of you like, come on, guys, cameras. And I always like it. If you think of like big lenses. It's just the actual. I can't remember what I was reading it in. It was just a magazine and saying like how we take for granted how mad phone cameras are. If you think of like the proper professional cameras, they're huge lenses because you need to have distance between two lenses to light to pass through just to function. And then you've got some of the thinnest kind of devices you can get, and you're fitting a camera into it, and that needs to have space between lenses for it to just process the light. And that's where you have like the cameras usually come out of the phones, because like we just physically can't not have some distance between two lenses.
I mean, it's interesting how, the push for that has really great. You'd never have had skinny cameras if you didn't have phones, would you? People would never have gone, we need to make cameras as thin as a notebook, because everyone's like, cameras, it's fine to hold a camera, there's no problem with it. It's only when you suddenly attach it to something else. I mean, imagine if people were like, we need to figure out how to make toasters drivable, but it didn't matter until you needed to attach a toaster to a car.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Attach a car to a toaster.
Can I pose a question back to you then?
Yeah.
If an object is defined by its use, for example, you sit on a log, the log is now a chair, or you drink from the skulls of your dead enemies, their skulls are now cups. What is a phone?
When does a phone stop being a phone, kind of thing?
If you had to define a phone now to an alien who didn't know what it was, how would you define it?
It's a handheld portable device communication. No, communication device with accessories. Just with extra functions.
With a torch and a camera and a laser pointer.
Yeah, Alistair, what's your thing to that? Would you add on it if you were to explain what a phone is, or what the minimum?
The minimum required, I'd say, yeah, these.
Maybe not minimum, because minimum is technically just phone, but I guess what is considered a phone now, what is the standard?
I think what was interesting to kind of add to this a bit is it how quickly you become, because obviously they've all got these new things and the latest thing and everything, but how quickly you kind of become used to the new thing and then you have to get the next new thing. You see what I mean? So yeah, I think that obviously does push innovation, and like, you know, there are obviously the things they can do now, like even video chat, like the way we're even talking to each other right now, obviously is completely mind blowing and would, you know, it is just, you know, fantastic as a means of communication. But yeah, sorry to explain to an yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head really. Just a communication with a cheeky bit of camera on it. There you go.
With an attachment.
Freddie, is there any new tech you've heard of for mobile phones? And that could be accessories onto them or just actual innovation within the phone itself. Like we used to have 3D cameras when phones first came back. Now we've got telephoto zooms on.
Well, I mean, every time I pick up someone who has the brand new something, for example, my friend here has the new iPhone 12 Pro X Max Extra Schlong. And whenever I play with it, I can't get over the camera. Like, I mean, it's 3 cameras, is it? Or whatever. And together they make these awesome photos of portrait modes and the fisheye lenses, and it's just all stunning. But other than that, and the weird folding phone that you guys are talking about, people talked about for years, like an extendable phone, you know, like with a rolled screen that extends. Other than that, nothing I've heard of.
I always like doing, like when phones first came out, it was such innovation of like, you know, like every time a new iPhone came out, it's like Steve Jobs would release it and he'd be like, oh my days, this incredible new feature, just look at this. And now it's like, guys, there's another camera on it. Do you like?
Or better, they just
that's
take
all
away.
we got.
Like, you know, when I think it was the 7 or the 8 came out, and they were like, "Oh, we've just taken away the headphone jack." That's about it, really. Other than that, it's basically the same.
We've got earphones now. I mean, not less about the phone, more about the earphone side thing.
Yeah, no. AirPods Pro actually, apparently, they won which is best. I don't know why I know this. This is just it's a weird bit of knowledge, but they won which is best like bit of technology for the year for 2020. And yeah, everyone I know has got them absolutely raves about them. You know, they're. It went sliced bread and then AirPods Pro apparently.
I do like when they first like released. Do you like how Apple just initial their kind of PR just absolutely nailed it? Of like when they first brought out iPhones and iPods and stuff, all the adverts were just classic white earphones and then like a white product, and that was it. And then it meant every time you saw somebody in the street with white earphones, you thought Apple products. You thought, oh, you got an iPod or an iPhone, and it's just something simple as that. They just like, right, we're just going to take white products and just that's Apple now, and it's just how effortless they did it.
If you can brand a color, that's shown to be really, really, really good. If
Yeah.
you brand a color, and I don't know, it's just because I'm working in this sector at the moment, but yellow is CAT or JCB.
Yeah,
Right?
fully.
In the construction world, it depends how it's done, and it's like other brands will like they just stand out by being yellow. Like that's a good one because
Yeah.
it's yellow. So then,
Yeah.
like some obviously copy companies will like just copy the color just to make it look like it's that.
Yeah, so someone looks and thinks
The brain says that's a good one.
John Deere
That's
tractors green.
Yeah, exactly.
I did think, speaking of the Apple adverts, right, I saw there's just a comparison thing of like when the first iPod advert, it was like 300 songs on your iPod, and now it's like 10 million songs on your wrist. Or,
Yeah.
and it's just, I don't know, yeah.
You have the internet and anything you want from your wrist.
Next year, 2 billion songs in your shoes.
Okay, here's the second question, which links to devices. Are phones good? So no simple answers allowed.
No.
There's no yes or no. It's got to be, or at least if you think it's one or the other, explain why you think it and how that overcomes the opposite. So you say, actually, they're all good. This is why, and I think this outweighs the negatives, or vice versa. The negatives outweigh the positives, but they're still, regardless, even if they're actually bad, they're still too useful not to be used.
I think when you look at them as like a word I now wish I'd said 10, 15 minutes ago, they're a tool, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what they are. They facilitate use of doing different things, and they make so many things so much easier that I definitely wouldn't want to go back to not having one. However, that being said, obviously you do need to control it, and there are, there's plenty of apps that are just designed to be as addictive as possible. One thing I remember when I was doing my A-levels, so when I was like 2014, I guess. I remember you go into the common room, and all the guys in there would just be playing like Candy Crush or something on the phone. And like, this should be, Tommy, you were chatting to people and playing cards or doing something, for the last however long at school would have been really good. But it was just guys playing, like swiping their phone. And I think that was a little bit, I would lament that a little bit. And as I said, I think you definitely need to rein it in and keep it under check. But having said that, I think the utility of it, like just Google Maps in your pocket whenever you're in a city you don't know, it's just so useful. It's just,
Oh man, yeah.
Like it's beyond useful. That's beyond. You can't explain that.
Yeah, like it's just amazing. And then obviously, as well, like just Spotify these days and everything is fantastic. So yeah, that's my take on this. Go on.
I don't know. I just agreeing with you. That's kissing your bum. That's such a good answer. But I'd say that maybe similar to this is going to be maybe a grand statement, but similar to farming, when everyone started farming and no one was hunter-gathering or weren't hunter-gathering as much, it's quite difficult to go back because everyone forgets how to do stuff. So you forget like the joy of listening to an album like all the way through, or you forget how to use a map, or etc. etc. But unlike farming, you don't die if you lose all the mobile phones. You can go back. It's just going to suck. So
could we go back? Realistically, if you think of all the business,
it's not going to kill you. Like the human race will survive.
Okay, so you're going to say get rid of all mobile phones. So that means think of everything like stock market, stuff like that. There'll be stuff which is just inherent on mobile phones now. People do so much now, like Zoom calls, everything. Can everything just be computers alone?
I feel like Freddie's saying, can the human race survive? And I think Johnny was saying, like, will it be nice?
If all technology just, the whole year 2000 apocalypse where suddenly all telecommunication stops.
Yeah.
People will be pissed. But we'll get by. Like it would just, I think communities would suddenly just form from very small bubbles where you'd have to you have to talk directly to people to get things done, and a lot more writing would happen. But it would suddenly shrink the world a lot. But I don't think.
Yeah, I guess my thing would be if technology, but mobile phones, it would end life as we know it, if you know what I mean. Because I think, I guess with computers we'd still be able to do stuff, but again, there'd be so much more like traffic from people not having Google Maps, or do you know like you can only do Zoom calls in an office, or do you like general communication? I guess people just focus back onto computers, but
I don't know. I saw quite a funny thing this week actually. I think it was like, imagine it's 10 years from now, you reach into your coat pocket and you see it and you pull out a mask and you think to yourself, oh, what a funny year that was, as you pick up your machete and go back through the wilderness, avoiding the shadows from the cannibals, just like, because this is especially 2020 was such like apocalypse light, wasn't it? It was so like people actually calling it an apocalypse. It so wasn't, like, it was just like it was the end of a lot of things we've come to be used to, but in terms of actually life being massively altered in some game-changing way, it's going to bounce back. I have faith.
Because it's like people are relating it to the war, the two wars, and it's like, there are some similarities. Everyone has to band together. Everyone's having to do like whatever. And it's all like the first time in like 60, 70 years of where people are suddenly, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's having to do the same things. And people are dying, but it's not like, it's different. It's light. It's, like there's some similarities, but it's not like if I go home, my whole home may be destroyed and life as I know it. And like, our community of, people, suddenly you come back after 4 years and there's like out of 1,000 people there's like 20 left.
Oh my God.
It's bad, but not wartime bad and rationing and not making the most people that died. It's just more of a case of hearing stories from Manine being like, no, the war was terrible.
Well, our gran said she was like, well, you could hug people in the war, so
go around to each other's houses in the war.
Yeah. That's true. Like, because I was in Mexico, and we had to go through all these security checks to get onto the job site, and you had to have the mask thing, and you had to beep your head and all this stuff, and you couldn't talk, you couldn't go near anyone. And I was like, oh, this sucks. Oh. And then the other guys I was working with were like, yeah, I guess, but it wasn't as bad as Saudi. Oh, was it Saudi? No, I'm trying to remember where he was, and he was like the job site near where they were got bombed while they were there, and they were just watching this like, and then as it's being bombed, the anti-missile things were being shot to blow up the missiles in midair, and they were like, he was showing me videos on his phone, like, look, this is what it looked like, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it's not so bad though, is it?
We had very first world issues compared.
Bit of a reality check, yeah. Well, lockdown's a very first world thing, right? Very much.
Yeah, and people complain that you got to stay. I mean, sometimes it'll be like if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's the big issue. But most people, it's just stay at home and watch Netflix.
Also, I mean, like as a country, third world poor countries cannot afford to have a lockdown because it's
India. Like I remember hearing then, but people may be in like shacks, and you're telling them like just stay there. You've got like maybe not even proper running water or electricity, and just stay in this shack up with like 8 people all day every day. And it's like
you've got bigger problems than coronavirus, I think.
Yeah. Oh, we're getting away from it. So my thing was, are mobile phones good or bad? So
yes,
Alistair. So are you saying yes or no?
Simple as I think they're good. Yeah.
And Freddie, are they good or bad?
I'm gonna go with no.
You go negative first, and then Alistair will rebuttal you.
Wait, he gets to rebuttal me. Why can't I rebuttal him?
Well, because you're negative.
Fine.
It always wins, Freddie. Have you never seen any movie ever? Jeez.
Come on now.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, so wait, my reasons for why they're bad.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna preface this with that I love mobile phones and I have the best time, but I think they're bad because, well, oh my God, where do you start? I think that as social creatures, they just hook us onto that sexy, delicious serotonin boost that we get from gratification of others without the actual human contact, which is only being amplified in this funneled COVID time. And that's not saying that I'm not a big whore for an Instagram heart, but I'm just saying that I recognize it as like sugar rather than a full meal.
It's an addiction in your pocket.
We do lose, like you said at the beginning of the episode, you're the one who Googles. Just because you have the power in your hand doesn't mean you use it. I mean, I was walking past a building today on my way to the shops on the empty streets, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to Google this building, and I did. And it turned out that like some bloke had built it in 1862. He'd put all his hard work into it. It actually took a lot of time for him to get some funding to make it. And then when it finally was built, like it was known as a Reformation area where people went and actually got converted from Roman Catholicism. And then I was like, well, all this stuff, but no one cares. No one Googles. And I think that mobile phones add to that because you've got the potential, you don't use it.
I guess it's oversaturation of knowledge, because to the point of where, yeah, something like that, you take time to look into stuff and people are like, yeah, but there's something else I can find which is better than that kind of idea. You know, like that's a nice photo on Instagram, but if I just keep scrolling, there's a better one. So yeah.
So that's my to summarize, to make it easier for Alistair, is that I think they are bad because they tap in to an addiction, and at the same time, although they provide us with ability, we don't use it.
Oh, yeah. Alistair, to you.
I think first of all, a lot of that you hear about, kids are, kids using their phones so much, we didn't do that when we were kids argument. I felt like there was some like point about this. It was like someone from the 1800s talking about the kids in the early 1900s, and it was exactly the same argument, but they just, every generation's used that because everyone has the rose tinted glasses through their own generation, I think.
Yeah.
And I said,
they're reading too much. How dare they? They need to go outside.
They're playing with these sticks and wheels like some lunatic, Satan. I think it would be a different world if we didn't have them. But I do think that I think the pandemic has shown that people can obviously get quite addicted to them and become quite dependent on them. However, imagine this pandemic without them. Imagine this happened 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, sat at home playing Snake all day. It's not really what we wanted to say. I mean, don't worry, there'll be some serious Pokemon masters. If this had happened when I was 11, I would have probably I don't know. But no, I think I think the communication, and then just there's also, I think, I don't know, we think you pay on them now as well, and there's so much stuff in life that it does just make it so much easier. And I think as they do get more integrated into our lives, I think that's going to become more so. So I think obviously if you remain cognizant of the pitfalls, then it can be a really useful tool. But again, it's like any tool. It's kind of like drugs, to be fair. Similar thing. Can be great, but probably might be bad.
And like drugs.
And don't do drugs. And don't do drugs. That's the.
You could say it's
how to deal with them. That's the thing.
Well, yeah. So this is one. I think this is the thing that always. I always think this. I can't remember if this is something I heard or something I thought of. Is that drugs usually have to go for years of testing before they're released into the public, and a lot of times it's like 10 years of testing, and because you need to know exactly how it's going to affect the population, are there going to be any ramifications? Whereas technology is, we made it as soon as we did, we put it straight out to the masses for everyone to consume, and we're having no testing to see if this is going to damage people. Look at Instagram, you've got whole new disorders which we never had before because of this kind of addiction to phones, and it's such a good tool, and just general technology, but it's how Freddie, as you say, people aren't using them to their full advantage, and they're just tapping into the addiction side. So they're a great tool, but how good's a tool if you're not using it properly? Whereas Alistair, you're saying you need to know about it, and then that's how good they are. But yeah, I always like it. If you leave your kids to the devices, they'll never come off the devices. It's like a nice play on words on this advert about like lockdown. They're a really good tool, but it can also be a crutch. With kids, it'd be like they can be a really good learning tablet, for instance, or phones. You can learn stuff off it. You can do so much communicating with friends and whatever, but at the same time, they can also be a crutch for parenting. And it's like, actually, you're not spending time with your kids because you're on your phone and your kids are on the phone. But actually, one good thing I want to say as well of, Alistair, you said about, you look back in the 1800s and it's the exact same thing. And it is a picture of the London Underground, and you've seen there's loads of men all in hats, suits, and they're all reading the paper. So it's no different from now. Everyone's on the phones, but back then people just read the paper. Like, people still have the same interactions. I think it's just there's worse addictions from it. But it doesn't mean we're necessarily changing how our society works. It's just more of like it's evolving to do the same thing we did anyway, but with new.
Can I say I mean, first of all, I agree with you about that. People always think that life was better back then, blah, blah, blah. But you've given me a really interesting thought as you were saying this about like the use of the tools. And I was thinking, right, I mean, I've had to reorganize this in my head. So you have, let's say, the phone, the technology, and you have the person, the human, right? And at the beginning, you have a simple thing, such as the phone, at its most simplest, and the human adapts themselves to be creative to make the most out of the tool, right? So you have texting, you're limited to 120 characters. You come up with a whole language just so that you can get as much information in as possible. You come up with the simplest games out of kilobytes, if not bits of information to make a whole Snake game. I mean, people have been playing Doom, was it, on fridges and toasters because they managed to figure out how to get this whole thing out of such a small amount of power. A whole game out of a small amount of power. So at first, in anything, cars, you have the technology at its simplest, and the human has to adapt and use its brain and have a good creative mind to use the most out of it. But then, as time progresses, the technology gets cleverer and cleverer, and we adapt it more and more and more to the human, so the human doesn't have to do anything. So now we're getting to the stage where, I mean, I just played an Apple TV for the first time in my life, which is crazy, but we never had it before. And the remote, you just swipe up with a special little pad. You can talk to it to tell it exactly what you want. You can swipe between music and YouTube through your phone as well. It all connects. The technology is adapting to us rather than the other way around. So now we can be lazy and the technology has to be clever, right? It's like a balance. I mean, the final example I came up with was cars are getting smarter and smarter. That makes us worse drivers.
Mm.
Right?
One thing you're saying about you're saying that actually the technology evolves to us. I'd actually say it ends up being the opposite as well, that we evolved to the technology. Like dogs being domesticated, we evolved together. It wasn't like man domesticated dogs. It was a case of dogs came to the fire, they warned them off and like, oh, actually these dogs are doing this to benefit us, and the dogs are like, oh, you're doing this to benefit us. So it's kind of more symbiotic than actually just one over the other. And one thing is, I always think with intuitiveness now is what seems like, oh, that just makes sense to us. It's only because we've been taught it makes sense. Like rolling. Like the thing I was going to mention about phones is, do you know the pictures for on off for answering or ending a call is a handheld phone receiver? Kids now, I say kids now, I mean, but people won't necessarily know what that means, what that symbol is. Or rolling up the windows in a car, rolling them down, it's because you have to roll them physically. That's all push to button. You may still use the terms, but you don't understand. Or like for phones, the intuitiveness is 3 dots or a cog means settings. You go to somebody and be like, why does that mean settings? Why do I know that 3 dots is meant to be for that, especially older people? And I was thinking in the future with like VR and different tech, we may come to a point of where the intuitive gestures for kids are being like, oh, you wave your hands in this way. Of course that brings up the settings. How do you not know that? And it's like, yeah, but no, our settings is a cog or 3 dots. What do you mean it's intuitive to wave your hands this way? And so that's what I think of, like,
come on, granddad.
Evolve together with the technology, that technology gets smarter and we get smarter, and then we're able to, as you're saying, use those shortcut language things for 120. So like, rather than writing the word settings, we know we can teach people and we can teach technology, little cog, that'll be instead. So we don't need to write it out instead. We can use symbols and shortcuts. Yeah.
Okay, just before, then Alice, I'm sure you have a point to this as well that you'd like to add. Just that, as much as I agree with you, I still think that we're putting less effort in the end. Even though the designers are putting more effort in to make it better for us as consumers have to do less to get out of it what we want, and don't have to be creative.
You don't have to. Yeah. Well, yeah. One thing of it, my nephew, you hear him talk, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I could just imagine doing this, and this on a game," and his imagination is in the confinement of a game. So it's like your imagination is now hindered by the game that you play, that you may, initially imagination is do whatever you want, whereas his now imagination is set within the game itself. So it's a funny thing I thought of, like, see, although, yeah, I mean, I remember as a kid, I did that with Star Wars films. I pretend to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I was like, do you know the scene after he kills the big alien and then his hair is a certain way? That's what I look now, and I'm fighting as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I remember that clearly in primary school as a kid. So I guess the confinement of my imagination was the film. But even so, for him, it's like you could be imagining anything, and you're imagining about the game that you're currently not playing at home, where you want to be. Instead, you're thinking about what you could do in the game, and then, yeah, it's mad how it's changed.
Nice. Yeah, I'd be curious. So, my two things on that. One quick little anecdote, which is quite funny. I remember when I was teaching these. When I taught, I think it was my grade 3 class when I used to teach. And this kid and I was doing this map thing in geography, trying to get them to just like they just had to draw a map, and they could put whatever they wanted on any square of the map, and they just had to like talk about which square it was, but like G5 or whatever it was on a grid. Nice and easy. And anyway, this kid he was going to sit down and he was going to draw something, and I was like, oh yeah, you can draw whatever you want, like anything in your imagination. And he just went, I forgot the password to my imagination. I just remember being like, wow, this is a new generation. I think he was probably born in like 2008, 2009,
So
maybe a
funny.
little later. So, yeah, but I don't know, it's born into the madness, man, these, I don't know.
This has nothing to do with your question whatsoever. But when I'm trying to make kids be imaginative, you never think that was an issue, and it is. I'm there with my class, and I'm saying to them, right, guys, like Alistair said, draw anything you want. You can't. You have to give them limits, because otherwise, I said, right, draw anything you want on a pizza, and they still would just pick spaghetti. Like spaghetti would be the most creative, or meatballs. Like you'd have to really pre-teach them that they can put anything on a pizza, like a shark or the whole planet Pluto. Pluto's not a planet, or but to really get them to imagine big, you have to first give them big, because they couldn't do it, and it's kind of sad. But then, is that just all life? I don't know. It's not.
Yeah, because I guess one thing you could say for my thing is actually, I always think of like people end up over sexualizing behavior of kids because they're trying to associate themselves with children and forgetting that kids haven't gone through puberty yet. Like don't worry about it. Like if what looks like a weird behavior to you as an adult, it is a weird behavior. As a child, it's normal. Like I was at my friend, she's a primary school teacher, and said like kids just get the bits out all the time. Like she's a reception and they're just like touching each other, they're showing each other, and it's just that's what kids do. And it's like if the parents just come in, they'd be like, oh my gosh, what's happening? It's like what debauchery is going on? It's like it's not. They're just learning and they're just doing whatever. There's no connotations that we would have. That's just part. They may as well be their finger for all they care for showing it. And it's so for me saying like he's confined himself to the game is actually like that's what kids have always done. As you're saying, you need to give them some structure to the imagination for them to go let loose on it. Yeah, Alistair.
I think I had a second point I was going to say from that one before, but it was about phones, right? And then it was
about phones.
I completely lost my train of thought. I'll be honest with you, but
that's fine.
This is what editing for.
Yeah, so we can just cut out. It's fine. So to wrap up for the initial kind of uses, you kind of said that phones are really communication device first, and then there's the extra, and then Freddie, you said about the core things of. Was it communication, access, and what was the last one?
Control.
And then now camera. You can't see on the podcast because I made a thing, but
and then camera. And Alistair, you were saying about just general communication, how there's such a pivotal part of life. Like look at lockdown and how we've used it so much and how it's just integrated into a lot. And then for the good versus bad, Freddie, you were on the bad side. And although, to what I feel to summarize is he's saying that phones have this incredible potential, but potential isn't worth anything if it's not used. And unfortunately, what happens in the real world is the potential isn't used, but what is the addictive side, which just captures people. So phones, although they can be used for great things, and they are, for the majority of people, they just key into your addictions, and they just end up being this negative thing, which although you're doing some like social media, you communicate with people, but at the same time it's not necessarily healthy communication. You're doing it for a reason, to get likes or whatever. So that's the bad side. Whereas Alistair, your good is on the thing of effectively the potential and what it is used for just every day in the world of like it's changed our lives for the positive. And you just, as long as you're aware of it, phones are always going to just be something which is like it's you're walking down the street, you've got Google Maps, you can call your mum if you need to, like what Abby's family moved to Dubai and they had to call like once a month. And when they did, it had to be limited to about 5 minutes because it just cost way too much to call international. And that's like in the 80s. Whereas now it's like you can just call somebody any time of day and it's free as long as you've got Wi-Fi or whatever. you know, and it's even for people who are like down on the luck, and like people even if they're homeless may still have a phone, you know, and it means you're connected and you've got more opportunities. So for us, the good is because although yes, there are the negative sides, it's just the fact they can do so much good and how they've improved everyone's life is that's positive. Yeah, so you think that kind of summarizes.
I do remember what I was going to say just quickly, if you want, because it was basically we're talking about the evolution thing. You know, we're talking about how we evolve and then we evolve to technology, or the technology evolves to us, kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think that as we make things that are making our lives easier and easier, yeah, we are getting kind of like losing skills there. But equally, I do think that I think there may be a bigger shift in that one. Like, so obviously, the thing about the cars as they get better and better at driving, our drivers are getting worse. But then obviously, if everyone has self-driving cars, they would be infinitely better than infinitely safer potentially. You'd hope. Yeah, I feel like there will be a sort of a pivotal shift as I think I don't want to sound too conspiratorial and that sort of thing, but AI once AI does become properly kind of a lot better, it's gonna I don't know. I think that's gonna be a massive change. I think if our kids were doing this podcast, they'd be like, oh yeah, 2050, the 2050, great AI, yeah.
It's so
15 million lives ended on August 28th, 1997. In what people were then called, was it the Judgment Day? But yeah.
So
I watched Terminator 2 recently.
So my final questions for you to go away and to look up is find some new phone tech. So something which is kind of like something pivotal, something which is kind of like, or maybe it's going to be 10 years released, or it could not necessarily just sci-fi, but something which is definitely actually going to hopefully be it's in the works, and it's something cool and be like, wow, this is going to be revolutionary. Maybe not revolutionary, but something cool. And the second one is find like an example. So just to kind of, because we've been talking about these kind of more generalized of what it can and can't be used for, and the good and bad, is find at least one great thing that comes from a phone and one terrible thing, and then just research something where it's like, this is like a hard fact, this is a positive, this is negative. And it can be one actual scenario, like, this kid in Kansas ended up committing suicide because he was addicted to social media and he couldn't handle it. Or it could be, more of a general thing of like, you look at this, like a whole school was able to do this over phones or whatever. But yeah, so that is the end of the first part. We'll see you in all of 2 seconds. But for us, it'll be a week.
Madness. Has anyone got used to this yet? It's mind-boggling stuff. It's mind-bending. This is
Sounds. That's great.
This is serious ASMR. Welcome to our ASMR episode.
I'd like you to welcome us back to the show, as it's been all of 2 seconds for you and a good week for us. And we were talking about mobile phones and whether they're good or bad and what new tech's coming about. And so hopefully we've been looking up some new stuff. And so the first question I asked you guys was find some new phone tech and confirm your initial thoughts. But yeah, new phone tech. And Alistair, what have you found?
Yeah, I might have to admit I got down a little bit distracted with the new tech, but it's related to new phone tech, so I'm going to go with it. Basically, obviously, I know you're a fan as well, Johnny, and I'm sure some of our listeners will be, of VR and the future possibilities of that being very exciting. So I'm basically just went down a rabbit hole for that, rather than looking at phones. Phones will bring it to the masses, I think, in a big way. I think the VR goggles that you can put your phone onto, and then they've got the 2 screens, because all it is high density pixel small screens in it, really, with a bit of fancy camera. I don't know. Anyway, the thing that was really cool that I thought was worth talking about briefly, which I haven't seen before, was these VR gloves that have just been announced. They're very much high end, not available for consumers at the moment, but they've basically got like a motor on the back of your wrist. Normal pair of gloves with a motor here, and then they've got, I guess, little sort of bits on 3 or 4 on each finger, and with little ropes attached, or little tiny strings attached to a motor on the back of your wrist, so it can then like mimic tension, which can then mimic the feeling of holding something without actually holding anything. So you can so the tension would be such that when you grip your hand, you can grip it to a point, and then say if you're picking up a ball, it would then stop when you get to the size of the ball and things like that. So I don't know. I think the future of that, I don't know.
It's less about, it's more about the feel for you rather than necessarily the input into the VR. You know, 'cause
Yeah, so they
it's-
would be both. Obviously, they'd be the controllers as well, because obviously, why would you not
Yeah.
throw that in there? But yeah, it was like the full,
that's
just
cool.
the immersion of it. Because obviously, holding the controller is cool, you can do stuff, but actually feeling it like it's there, that's the new. I don't know. That
And
would be
then
really cool.
it would go into gestures, because I know like you can get
Oh,
already
of
you've
course,
got like
yeah.
the hand gestures, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like the home button is hand facing upwards, and you touch your thumb and your finger together.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like
that would be our generational. Get me left behind on that from the new VR.
How do I
kit,
get to settings? Where's the cog? Darren, where's the cog?
Exactly. But yeah, that was a little bit of a rabbit hole, but it was a lot of fun.
Nice. So Freddie, new tech for you?
So, because I was being all negative last time, earlier in the episode, about capability of phones, I found something negative, maybe very weird. So I was walking along the street to go shopping, and I saw a shop called DNA Nudge. Have you any idea what DNA Nudge is?
No.
So this is central London. This is in Covent Gardens. And I was like, what is that shop? It looks very kind of like Apple Watchy, if you know what I mean. And it's a bracelet that you go in, you have your mouth swabbed or something. They break down your genetic code. Well, they take, they scan, you get your genetic code, and they then measure up the genes you have to a database that says if something's more or less healthy for you. Now, I realize that having studied biology, I should probably have explained that better, but it seems very creepy. So you then have this watch thing attached to you that's connected to your phone. And when you scan items in a supermarket, it tells you on your phone if that item is somehow better or worse for you because of your genes. That's a shop. Am I missing something? Did I fall asleep for a bit?
That's really cool. I like the idea of just like you go towards some foods and it'd be like, no, stop, that's fat.
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, it's like tells you if you've been still for too long. There's a nudge match feature where you can find out what genes you have related to other people, which seems kind of like an incest detector. I don't know.
It's like the idea of being like, hey, look, you're my sister. You're like, yes, I know. You didn't need to watch to tell you that.
Beeping while you're eating this.
I don't understand what, like, it, you just go and you beep like some cheese, it's like, no, bad. And you're like, okay, watch, please, can I have it? No, bad. Okay, I mean, some bread, no, bad.
Well, yeah, the joke.
Yeah.
Well, I think the introduction of more technology into our lives is obviously steadily, like the Apple Watch does that pretty much now. Like it will give you, it even has a thing since COVID of, obviously you can turn it all off, but it knows when you're washing your hands and it will tell you if you've done it for long enough and stuff like that. So, there is stuff like that all around. But
I haven't brushed your teeth in 10 days. Shut up.
Jesus.
You snooze. But you,
It's-
Alistair, you told us about CES, right? Was it CES?
Yeah, that's basically where I saw this thing about these gloves, and it wasn't. Yeah, it was. I just pretty much I hadn't even heard of it until last night when I was looking up. But yeah, it's basically like a Comic-Con for tech kind of thing, where these tech companies show off what they're working on. But yeah, so one of the interesting things there was the sort of VR glasses as well. Again, obviously all VR, and obviously AR kind of in that world. But so yeah, like I think Apple would be coming out with some Apple glasses either this or next year potentially, which is
See if they work.
I don't know. I think it's kind of the death of hardware in a way. You can imagine it, even the applications for like working. If you just had your laptop, you can then put the glasses on, and then you've got an extra 5 screens around it. That you can interact with. It's quite It's not a leap to talk about it. I think it's very much within the next few years it's going to be a thing.
Yeah, because I remember seeing this like concept advert thing, and it was that thing about you go into your home and it's just pretty, the walls are blank or whatever, and there's not much going on, but you put your glasses on and suddenly you've got this huge like TV on your wall instead. And it's like, if you watch Altered Carbon, and that was like just walking through the street and it's just like dingy, dark and quiet, puts on these contact lenses, suddenly you're getting blasted with adverts and everything's bright and noisy, and like it's that idea of initially like, when are we going to make holograms, and then realizing no, that's silly. When are you going to change how, if you're just viewing it, it doesn't need to be far away, it just needs to appear far away, and it would make it really small in your eyes. We don't need to make a big bit of hardware.
But there's some really cool like videos of what that might look like in like London. I don't know how you can find it. I've seen it. So like getting on a bus and seeing these adverts like going around your head and like things appearing and spinning, and like you have to like close adverts that are coming up and popping up. And you're like, God damn it, go away. And
there's a very quick knee-jerk response to like the sort of dystopian future of that, which obviously would be all that, and you get everyone saying, oh, you've got to be pure and there'll be people who are really vehemently against it. But I think at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Like I said, I think the Apple Watch is a good example of that, because so you can, when you get out of the box, it's going to have loads of settings that are annoying, like it has notifications about stuff, but you can turn all that off. You can. I think as a consumer, as long as you're paying money, then you'll have the same freedom from adverts. Hopefully, otherwise people aren't going to change directly what they want. It's going to be how it gets given to us, I think.
Yeah, and this is what it's that thing of, for the companies to make the most amount of money, they can do it through ad revenue, but at the same time, people aren't going to buy a product if it's just riddled with ads. So at the same time, it'll be that middle ground, isn't it, of being like, we'll make sure you can turn these features off so people still buy the product.
I don't think it's a generational thing, right? So I am outraged when YouTube is putting adverts in the middle of a tutorial, and you're like, what is this, god damn it? And even though yes, YouTube is free, and then YouTube's like, yeah, you can pay for premium, and you're like, shut up, YouTube. But like, if you like kids these days, they don't see it like that, do they? They don't remember not having adverts on YouTube. So yeah, like slowly but surely they'll get used to it. And then who says that you have to turn off these settings? What if it's just like, but that's just the way it is?
Do you know what I love on the flip side of that is when our nephew, so Abby's sister, brother-in-law, they came to England, and they live in Canada, just FYI, I know. And they don't really watch, because obviously they're expats to Canada, they don't really have Canadian TV, because they just don't really like it. It's not really their cup of tea. And so what they use is Netflix, or they'll stream stuff like ITV Player or BBC Player, still whatever. And they came to England, or rented like this cottage in Northumberland. And then we put on the TV for them while we're just about to get ready. And it was like Hotel Transylvania, the movie. So they all sat in the bedroom, and then we kind of started packing stuff up to go to the beach, whatever. And they came through, and I was like, what's going on the TV? It's broken. And we walked in, and it was just the adverts, because they'd only ever watched Netflix or stuff without adverts. So they got really confused of why they were watching the film. Suddenly it stopped, and there's random stuff on the TV. And, I thought it was really funny, because they just had no idea the concept of watching a film, and suddenly it stops for the adverts, as you do on TV. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah.
That's actually a good example.
One thing I can't remember why I did this. It wasn't that long ago. I watched a DVD, and at the beginning of a DVD, you had all those piracy.
Yes.
You wouldn't steal a handbag. You wouldn't steal all those things. So, complete nostalgia, but you haven't seen for so long. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how quickly you get used to something as well, I think.
Right. So to carry on, the second question was find at least one great thing that comes from a phone and one terrible thing. Try to have an actual scenario and one general theme. So be it one could be this person did this, or the other one would be this is a trend which is happening to multiple people. So Freddie.
Yeah, I actually had such a good time with this. I didn't think I would, but I did. Because at first I was just Googling, good things about phones, and it'd just be people ranting. So then I was like, oh wait, how do I get past this? Oh yeah, actually published papers. So I started just smashing buzzwords into Google Scholar, and I found a paper. This was fun, because this is why this show is fun, because I was very negative about phones, if you remember from earlier in the episode. This paper is called "The Role of Mobile Phones in Sustainable Rural Poverty Reduction." And wow, phones really do benefit impoverished people in rural areas. And I'm talking GDP growth, job creation, productivity, tax revenue, entrepreneurship, job searching, market inefficiency improvements, transport substitutions, disaster relief, education and health, social capital, and social cohesion. And this is a paper, so it's fancy. And to be fair, I did look at it first, thinking it's a bit wishy-washy, but their method was not it's not just talking to people; it's actually facts. So, for example,
actual science.
Yes, if when an area has 10 phones per 100 people, the GDP on average increases by 6%.
Whoa.
Just smash facts. The fact that somehow having I can't remember what the actual amount of phones is, in an area, reduces the cost of transport, just because time is saved and therefore money is saved in the ways that people get transport, or pay for transport, or just a bunch of other stuff, jobs included. So,
do you know where the study was carried out?
yes, hang on, I've got the paper in front of me. This is from 2008. This is.
So while you look for that, I'll just say me and Freddie went to Tanzania with university, and one thing that so you have the Maasai tribe, and they're obviously like, whatever happens when you have tribal communities suddenly getting thrust into the modern world and just them trying to find their way. And one thing is through mobile phones, and that how they do it is it's really bad to steal someone else's phone, because rather than having bank accounts in the same, well, they do have bank accounts there as well, but it's like phone credit, but that ends up being your whole account. So it'd be like you put money onto your phone, and then say if you're middle of nowhere, some Maasai man wants to sell to another Maasai man some cows, but right, I'll just send you, effectively text you money over. So here's like, for us to be like, there's 50 quid, I'll have your cow now. And that's just how it works. And suddenly you don't need to worry about even like pockets, for instance, with money when you're out in the middle of nowhere, and everyone's got a phone, everyone has this kind of system, and it just works great. And there's no kind of like faffing around. It's just simple, easy, and effective. And the whole country uses it, and it's just hugely just modernized everything and helps them massively. Freddie?
So I may have to fix this later when I go through the paper again. It's quite long, but not done based on certain areas in kind of a space-wise. It's done on the telecom companies releasing their data, if that makes sense. So it's taken Mobile, Vodafone, China Unicom, T-Mobile, Singular, Orange, Verizon, Viva, and they
Orange.
and they've taken data that they got. So I understand that actually maybe it could be quite biased if they wanted to, but I guess further looking, I don't know, edit this.
No, I'm not gonna.
So further insight is required, but I mean, why release a paper like this if there's not something somewhere to
even with the biases, it's not going to be like phones have been a detriment, really, because I guess as well, when we think of phones, we're thinking like modern day addicted to social media, whereas your mobile phone, say like when we were in Tanzania, it was just, you know, like Nokia phones. That's all you needed. You just need to be able to text somebody your money amount, and that was it. So that could be nothing. So Alistair?
So I realised I didn't really do this in the spirit of the show very well, because what I did actually was just go down a rabbit hole of unfortunately quite similar to Freddie's, but basically I looked at it in China, which is the thing I already kind of know a bit about, and went further into that. Was obviously, I think what I should have done is probably just go a completely new route that I had no idea about, or no idea yet. Basically, I was, in terms of the good and great and terrible things about phone, I went for the fairly generic. The good things it's done, communication and bring people together, and you know, especially people who are far apart, and then versus obviously being tethered to it and being really kind of, you know, dependent on it. I think in terms of being tetheredness, that's not a word, but if you went to try and live without a mobile phone in the modern world, I think you'd definitely struggle, to the point like if you tried to do that in China, you wouldn't be able to do it, I don't think, because like you say, like the payment fees you were just talking about there, that is absolutely basically a cashless society over there. It's not, obviously they have cash and they use it in a lot of situations, but for the most part, yeah, it's very much, it just becomes such a part of your life that you're using it all the time. And that led me on to actually being curious about actual phone times a day. So quickly for you, any guesses at the average screen time on a phone?
2 to 6 hours.
Yeah, 3 hours 15 minutes for the average. But for millennials, it's 5.7, which seems,
Wow.
that seems mad. But to be honest, I believe that. I think
we can say the average, but millennials being from like
millennials are
25 to 35.
Actually way older than you think. Yeah.
Yeah. So was it Gen Z? Gen Z is what everyone says is millennial, which is like 25 below, isn't it?
Yeah. So what do you actually think when you say millennial? Will probably be, but actually I don't know, but actually even higher. But like I said, I think TikTok is another really good example of how this is just kind of like, it's all about the joke of, you know, back in time people would have thought everyone was black and white, but actually now if you look at video taken now, you think suddenly the world went vertical with how all of our videos are now. So yeah, which was quite funny. Yeah, I did get on another little one about time and just how again I think this is not super related to the thing. Again, I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, but I think it's really interesting. and it was talking about long short versus short long time. Okay, so it's like how we perceive time basically. And I don't know if this is something you guys have come across before, but it's something I had no idea about really until I looked it up. But it does relate to time because it's how much you can, how much you perceive time passing by quicker when you're distracted and everything. But basically, the example they used was you're at an airport. Okay, you've got to wait. You're going on holiday. You've got to wait 4 hours for a delayed flight. Now, while you're waiting in those 4 hours, so like prospectively, it feels like it's taking a really long time, right? And then the next day, you've got a full day of being on holiday, and it's jam packed, and it flies by. Yeah. So in terms of the way you perceive it, it's absolutely flying by. Now, when you look back on it, so retrospectively, then the 4 hours just disappeared. Like didn't seem like any time at all because your brain, nothing was happening. We're actually reminding you that this was, this time was going past. And then the full day actually, in retrospect, feels really long because there were so many things that happened that your brain perceives these different things happening and it gives it that length. So that's kind of short, long.
So cool. I like that.
I thought it was really interesting. So yeah, again, not I apologize, not super related.
No,
because when you're in the airport, you'll have to be on your phone, and when you're on your phone for 4 hours, it just goes by in a flash because nothing really happens. So
exactly. And that's the joke. So the funny thing about that in the modern world was that TV and phones create a new thing where you have short, where it feels short while you're doing it, and then when you look back on it, it feels short as well. So if you want to live a long life, do lots of planking and lots of things that make time go on.
Planking. Oh. Yeah, sitting with your phone out, and there's TV on, and there's maybe some vague noise in the background, and just like you can lose like hours
and hours. Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing. Only lost.
I can't remember we were watching something, and it was like it's funny that I remember seeing it was a Mythbusters or something. I can't remember what it was about. It was about isolation, and that effectively when you're in isolation, you sleep a lot more, and eventually you go into depression. But I think it's that thing of like your body is actually just saying like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just gonna like power down for a bit. So you just get tired. You're not doing anything. You're so bored. You just go to sleep because I feel like that's phones and TV. When you do that, it's kind of like you're powering down. Nothing really happens. You're just procrastinating to a point of where nothing's gained, but you pass time.
But you need to have things that actually simulate memories that give you that perspective that something happened for a long time. Right? So if you spent a day or two in complete isolation with nothing, obviously during it would feel so long. But when you look back on it, it would feel like an absolute flew by because your brain has no reason to remember the things in it. So I don't know. I thought it was fascinating to actually look at that and how we spend our time there. So probably could be a whole episode on its own, to be fair. But,
so would you say that was positive plus negative? Because in China it's kind of like a thing of where like it was good and bad because your phones are used for everything, but the bad was that you're so reliant on it you can't really not have a phone, and therefore and then the other thing of being that now you've got phones which are the short phone and TV, so that's the new
when you're starting wasting your life away. But then again, I think that is a whole another debate about whether if you're happy doing something while you're doing it, does it need to be the most fulfilling and long thing every time you do something? Does it like that? So obviously the really interesting thing you can relate to now. So if I look at, I've been working from home since October, so that's when the days really start to feel the same. And if I look back on it since October, it's currently January in 2021. Look back in October, who knows when someone's going to listen to this, Johnny? Who knows when we're going to release it as well. But so the last few months are just absolutely flown by looking back at it. But obviously the days are kind of, to be fair, the days are going quite quickly as well. But I think it's funny.
So Freddie, you got something because you said a positive. Did you find a negative?
Yeah, I did. Obviously.
But do you want to finish what you're going to say then first?
Yes, just that because I used to be a study assistant, a study counselor or something in my job.
You talked at schools.
I talked at schools. That you can hack what you were talking about, the short long thing, to help you with making studying go faster or more beneficial. Part of it is like when you need your break, if you have a break of 5 minutes, you can make that break massive by just getting up, going to a completely different part of the house, A, moving, B, being in a different area, literally drinking a glass of water and having a quick conversation with someone and come back. And that's a proper break. But if you have 10 minutes, if you sat there on your phone, it's nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And your body is like, we haven't had a break. We're still sat here looking at a screen. What's the difference? So it's interesting you saying that because it's so true. I mean, you feel it yourself.
But also, I'll quickly have a little thing. I remember in Tunisia, I went to Sahara Desert, and I remember it was like they said, "Oh, it's going to be like a 6-hour coach ride or something to get to the desert," and I'm like, "Oh man, this is like 14 or something." And I remember, and this is the first time ever doing it, of taking snapshots. And I remember this, I still have this memory of we started off, and I remember taking like a mental image of our starting point, and it was like this kind of like not a cityscape, but that kind of thing, just some buildings or whatever. Then when we got to where we needed to be, I remember back to it, and I was like, man, that was so long ago, but it feels instant because now you kind of like you've jumped ahead because you remember a certain moment. Now you can look back every time and like that's an hour ago. Suddenly, if you count it, ages.
Yeah, you play that game, don't you, where you can take a snapshot and like boom, and then you like pause, and then when you get to the place you wanted to be or whatever, you think back to the snapshot. Like, I made it. You travel
teleport. Sorry, go Freddie.
So my negative was interesting because I got into the swing of looking at papers, and I found this one in Sweden where they sent questionnaire to 10,000 people to ask them if they wanted to be part of this study on mobile phones. And the interesting part is that they sent every single one of them a lottery ticket. They could use the lottery ticket whether they entered the questionnaire or not. Like, this is proper, advanced Nordic countries being all proper and nice to everyone, 10,000 euros worth of lottery tickets. In the end, they managed to get 4,000 people or something. And they were doing a study of 20 to 24-year-olds on their use of mobile phones and how they perceived they were using them, if it was positive, negative, how much they used them, a lot or not a lot. And I'm pretty sure you can guess what happened in the end. Yes, high use correlated with dissatisfaction in life, sleep disturbances, and other symptoms of depression after a year. And 1/4 of the people were, just because this is an extra fact that I thought was interesting, 1/4 of the people said or answered the question about how often they would be expected to be on hand or on call using their phone. 1/4 of them answered with 24/7, 7 days a week.
Wow.
Like, I didn't think anyone could answer a phone at 2 a.m, but apparently some people feel that if they get an important email at 3 a.m, they are meant to deal with it.
Wow, yeah, it's only super important stuff like someone's called you and it's like, I need help and I'm dying.
I just turn my phone off at night. If they're going to die, there's nothing I can do about it, probably. Someone better than me.
It's just somebody knocking on the door. Well, my phone is off, so it's just that.
Yeah. So that, in case anyone wants to look that up, it was 2011, mobile phone use and stress, sleep disturbances, symptoms of depression among young adults. I can't remember the journal.
So I'll go over a bit of a summary. So for the tech part, Alistair, you mentioned VR gloves, but we brought it back to that VR kind of phones hugely launched VR, to be honest, because suddenly everyone could have VR without having to spend like 500 quid on a headset. People were like, is it just going to be like bad? Freddie used it about DNA nudge, and that's about effectively machines controlling you and like your phone being like a controlling part of tech that, it'll tell you when to do stuff, what not to do, what's good, what's bad. And then for the good and the bad stuff, Alistair, you talked about in China, it's kind of like a positive, negative, that it's just in every aspect of life. And you can't really live without a phone, be it that as good or bad as you make it. And also that phones have done a new thing where it's short, where it just kind of a negative. And Freddie, your positive was it improves rural areas hugely, as we've even seen in real life that, they make a huge impact in rural areas and just really connecting everyone and just making everything flow better and raising all levels, everything. And your bad thing was that people spend way too much time with their phones, and it is linked to bad sleep, depression, and general badness.
Badness.
And so this, I thought I'd add a little section of a little, I know something, but you don't know it yet. And it is a nice biscuit. So I'm sure have you had these before?
Yeah.
Just nice biscuit. Yeah. Do you know what flavor it is?
Biscuit.
It's a flavor which I learned today because Abby was like, "Oh yeah, this." I'm like, "No, it's a flavor." Can you guess what flavor it is?
I want to say vanilla, but I'm sure it's not.
Almond.
It's coconut. It's coconut. It's got desiccated coconut in it, and that just blows my mind. As a kid, I remember it as the sugary biscuit with sugar on it, and that was it. And it's totally coconut.
Nice. Nice.
I like that. Subliminal, not so subliminal messaging, right?
Eat nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty
Are
good.
you flexing that your COVID is now gone? Then I take it if you can now taste coconut.
I can't smell it though.
You know, yeah, that's bad.
Do you even smell that? Imagine she's just messing with you, like it has no smell. She's like, "Can you not smell it yet, Jonathan? Come on!" And you're like,
For Christmas, Abby got loads of like wax melts, and it was like can't smell anything. Also, the first smell I had, because I can smell some things a little bit every now and then, dependent. The first smell was Ezra's poo nappy, and I was like, "He's pooed." I'll tell you now, you don't realise how much you need your smell than with the baby, and it's like, no, you need to be able to smell it because otherwise it's bad when you don't change them. Poor kid. But yeah. So, thank you for following us on this journey through mobile phones. I have been Jonathan, the host for this week's episode. We've had Freddie, thank you, and thank you, Alistair. This has been Mobile Phones, and this has been No Idea Yet. Cool. I should have been eating while I was doing that.
Thank you for listening to No Idea Yet. If you've liked the show, you can also follow us on Instagram. It's No Idea Yet Podcast. And if you have any comments, information you thought we missed, or recommendations for the future, drop us an email at noideayetpodcast@gmail.com. Stay tuned every Saturday when we drop our new episodes. And thank you for listening.